Welcome to episode 183 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. Today we're going to be finding out what Val Thorens is like in summer, how Australian ski resorts are dealing with lift queues, and all about the latest campaign from Protect Our Winters. My name is Ian Martin. I'd like to introduce my guest today. I'd like to welcome back Jen Tsang. Regular listeners will know Jen's voice. She'd been on the show several times. I think the last episode was 164, normally reporting from Plagne, where she lives. Hi, Jen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's great to be back again. Thanks for having me.
Can I ask, where are you today?
So I'm in Cardigan in southwest Wales this morning, visiting family and friends.
Okay, well, I'm sure it's very lovely there. Shame I was going to ask you what the view is like out the window, but I know
it's pretty beautiful.
Pretty warm in the Alps at the moment. I'll come back to that a little bit later on. I'd also like to welcome back Lindsey Dixon from Protect Our Winters. She was last on the show in episode 168 when she was telling us about taking the train to Vallees, where she was lucky enough to spend much of last winter. Hi, Lindsey. How are you going?
I'm good, thanks, Ian. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Whereabouts are you today?
I'm also visiting family, actually. I'm just outside London, planning to take my mum out for a birthday lunch.
Excellent. So a question I always like to ask my guests, might be a little predictable asking this question in the middle of August, but when did you last ski or snowboard? Jen, when was that?
Oh, the last day of the season in Plagne. So it was right at the end of April on the 29th. And we always make a real effort to get out for first lifts on the first day of the season, and we try and get last lifts on the last day of the season. I don't think we stuck it out quite that long this year because there was actually a lot of snow. It was pretty great, but it was quite warm. And halfway through the day, we started with some rain and some very slushy snowfall. So I think we called it quite early. But we did do some marmot spotting while we were out and about on the slopes. We managed to count quite a few marmots, which was fun.
Oh, so you didn't get literally the last lift of the season, but just to track back, then do you normally try and get literally the first lift of the season? When they first start turning, you try and get on those?
We try. I say, and you can't see me because it's a podcast, but I try. Since having children, the ability to get out of the house for 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning is somewhat hampered. So we might be maybe on the 10th or 11th lift.
Yeah, not bad. Lindsey, what about yourself? When were you last on snow?
On snow would have been in the winter, but I last skied last month. I went and had a go at that Skieasy thing, where it's like a treadmill.
Yes, I know that
one. I had a crack at that about 3 or 4 weeks ago, which was interesting. It's not quite being out on snow, but it was still quite good fun.
Yeah, whereabouts did you do that?
In Chiswick. There's because I think they used to be Chelsea, but I think that's closed now, and now they have one of those. Yeah,
I've been to that one in Chiswick as well. There's like a David Lloyd or something that it's in, isn't it?
There's a golf club and some tennis or something there as well.
I actually found that experience on skiing on the treadmill, however you want to describe it, as being pretty damn hard because you've got to be really focused on your technique, haven't you?
It's very unforgiving, and I think probably quite good for if you want to really focus on technique. But yeah, it's also very bizarre for a first time on it because you're sort of going backwards and you're trying to trying to manage your speed so that you're sort of stationary in space and time while the floor's moving. So it's unusual, but it's cool to have a go.
Yeah, I thoroughly recommend it to anyone who's taking kids out skiing or anyone out skiing for the first time, because my kids have been to those type of features. I think they were called Skiplex. The company had several of them, because at one point there was one in Basingstoke and one in Bracknell, the one in Chiswick as well. There's actually one relatively near me called Moving Mountains in Sussex. And they are really, really good. And what I really liked about them for the kids, the instructor can stand at the front and can just switch a button to turn the treadmill, as you put it, off at any time. So if someone falls over, you can just stop it, or if they want to discuss technique. And in most of the ones that I've been to, there's a mirror at the front as well. So anyone who's doing it, you get an immediate visual feedback on your own skiing, which can be good or bad depending how it's going.
I found that really useful, and especially because obviously it's not cold either, so you're kind of in normal sports gear rather than all the ski layers, so you can really see, obviously you've got that immediate visual feedback, but you can also just really see your body positioning and your angles and stuff a lot more easily than on, say, video feedback when you're on snow.
Yeah, and as I said, that's not always a good thing, is it?
No, that's true.
Yeah, you think, oh, I'm such a brilliant skier, and then you see yourself on video. It's like one of the things, Warren Smith and various other people always incorporate video into their lessons. Just on the theme of skiing and snowboarding, last, I have skied relatively recently. In that, regular listeners will know, if they've listened to episode 182, that I was in Australia about a month ago, where I skied in Perisher and in Thredbo. And if all goes well, with a bit of luck, I might be skiing again next week, because I'm going out to the Alps. And I'm heading to Zermatt, and there's a reasonable chance that I might be able to sneak in at least a few turns. So that would be really exciting. I think I'd probably still count that as adding on to my 22-23 season rather than starting the next one. So we'll see how that goes. But that's just one of the things you can do in the mountains. I'm going to be going to the Alps and doing a bit of hiking, maybe skiing, and definitely some trail running. Jen, I wanted to have you on the show because I know you live in the mountains, you live in La Plagne, but more recently you've just been over to Val Thorens on a short trip there with your family. Was that a bit of a busman's holiday for you? What's it like being, going to a ski resort in summer?
It's brilliant. So we always, the expat community in La Plagne and also in the other resorts where I have friends, we always say you arrive for the winters and then you stay for the summers, because they are truly spectacular. And it's also when the pace of life just slows down a little bit and we have more time. There's just more time to catch up with friends, spend time with family, and just to really pause and enjoy the alpine kind of atmosphere and lifestyle. And I think we all know, working in hospitality and things, it's absolutely manic. So in the winter, we just don't have time to visit other places and see other friends. I mean, I live in La Plagne, I live in Plagne Centre, and I can't often get to Plagne 1800, which is 200 meters down the mountain, to catch up with friends. It's just, life is just full speed ahead. And so getting to another ski resort is impossible. And so this summer, we really wanted to make the commitment to go and see some of these other resorts in the summer, because they are all so incredibly different. And so, yeah, it was great to get the time to go up to Val Thorens and really explore it. And I don't know the area well in the winter or in the summer. So it was really good fun to just go with a kind of clean slate and get up there and explore and see what we could find. And with the kids as well, and explore from the family angle.
Oh, and remind me, how old are your kids?
So they are 5 and 6, nearly 7. So there's 2 years between them.
Yeah, and so what did you do? I mean, I'm trying to remember if I've been to Val Thorens in summer. I've certainly been to Les Tourvalets in summer. I'm going to be in Val Thorens next week. But what's on offer there at this time of year?
So we picked the weekend where they were having the Summit Games, which is it's a big trail running event. So they have over a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, different events. So they start with a crazy cross on the first day, which is a bit of a parkour fun style event. And then there's the more serious competitions like the 10K and I forget how long, but 25K, 40K kind of events. And we took part in the family walk, which is just very super relaxed, very easy going. You take the lifts all the way up to the top of Val Thorens and then walk all the way back down. It's about 5 kilometers on the way back down. So yeah, we went for the weekend when that was happening to do that, and then also to be able to explore the other bits and things that were in Val Thorens and also in Les Menuires and in the surrounding little villages as well.
So at the moment, it's pretty warm over in the mountains. I think the weather was, less predictable when you were there. Is that right?
It really was. And it just goes to show that it doesn't matter how much you travel or whether you live in the mountains or not. Sometimes you are just completely caught off guard by the dramatic temperatures and the environment. And so when we drove up to VT on the Friday, it was very overcast and quite sleety in the air. And it did snow that night. It was incredible. We were kind of perched in the clouds where we were staying, and we could see the snow line kind of just up above us. And on the Saturday it did clear and we had gorgeous weather. It was really, really lovely. So we had a lovely day exploring on the Saturday, and then the Sunday, which was when we did the family walk, it had snowed again. And when we got up to the top peaks where the walk started, we kind of got out of the gondola and just walked into a blizzard, essentially. And
not necessarily what you're expecting in August, right?
No, absolutely not. And it's so stupid, but we just weren't prepared. You know, we hadn't put any woolly hats in for the kids. We didn't have gloves with us. So yeah, it was interesting. It was still really good fun, but we were really taken off guard. Yeah.
Oh, Jen, you're being very honest there, but you know, it's a fact that in the mountains at any time, you know, the weather can change really quickly. Yeah, for sure. But I think in Val Thorens, when I went in December, Le Bourd was just opening up, and that's their new sports centre there, and it hadn't really, all the features weren't ready there. But I did wander around. This would be a brilliant place to take the kids. They would absolutely love it. You went there and tried it out?
Yeah, so we went a couple of times, and it really is fantastic. So when we went, you kind of enter from kind of below, and it was only the following day when we were doing the walk that when you're up on the lift looking back towards it, it's shaped like a snowboard, which is why it's called Le Bourd. And it's a really kind of quite beautiful building. And so yeah, we went and we explored. We went on the first day with the kids and we went to the pool, which was brilliant fun. So they've got a really lovely, really modern, really fresh swimming pool there. The kids really enjoyed it. And then I ducked out to just have a look at the wellness area, and I don't think I returned back to the family for a good half an hour. It's really, really big. I didn't realise, because it's kind of tucked away and you really can't see it at all. And it's access only for adults. So I think it's 16 years and upwards. And it's really, really big. There's loads of saunas and steam rooms. There's an ice like plunge pool. Really, really nice. So you really can do the family kind of side of it. And there's a little slide into the pool and bubble jets and like jacuzzi style in the pool for the kids to have fun. But then you can kind of separate off and go and do the adult thing as well. Yeah, it was really, really great.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds similar to the setup they have at Aquamotion in Courchevel 1650, which we've been to with our kids a whole bunch of times. And there's an adult section, you know, upstairs with the sauna and the steam room, etc. And, you know, we kind of play tag, so go up there and just chill out. You know, while the kids, you know, jump around and go off the diving boards and stuff like that. Talking about, do they have any diving boards in Le Bourd? Because my kids have always liked this like lack of the different approach to health and safety that we've seen in French swimming pools compared with the UK.
Yeah, there was nothing like that. There's a small little slide which was quite good for my kids, so you know, 6-year-olds. There is a couple of lanes that are kind of roped off, so there was a couple of adults there doing some laps, which was quite good. And then the pool area was very kind of free form. But no, the lifeguards, I would say as well, were absolutely fantastic. They were kind of wandering around and interacting with the kids and throwing stuff in for them to jump in for and dive as well. So it was good. You feel welcome as a family without interrupting the adults, which is good.
Cool. Well, I think regular listeners will know, you know, triathlon is one of my hobbies, and I've swam in lots of different ski resorts around the Alps. And I can tell you that before there used to be, get the right choice of word here, a not very good swimming pool in Val Thorens, but I did swim there, and you're swimming at 2,300 meters above sea level, and I can tell you that's a bloody good workout. You know, it's really hard to do any kind of exercise at that level, but you know, swimming up there. So you know, if you want to do some you know, training, that can work. They've also got, like, outside of the aqua side of things, there's other facilities and features at Le Bourd as well, right?
Yeah, so we had a kind of an explore and a walk around the whole facility. So they've also got a full gym and fitness sauna thing there, which we didn't go into, but it looks really well set up, really well established. There's a massive sports hall as well. There was lots of different activities organised through the week, like badminton and table tennis and all that kind of stuff. But they've also got, and this was the thing that my kids had the most fun on the whole weekend that we were there, is this huge soft play area. And we kept calling it the fun zone. I'm not sure if that's actually what it's called, but it's massive. So it's free for under 5s. And then I think for an unlimited, I could be wrong, but I think for an unlimited amount of time, it's €10 for older kids. And it is the best money that we spent probably the whole weekend. So we went in and it's huge. They've got some little go-karts that you can kind of drive around on a little track in there. There's huge climbing structures. There's about 4 or 5 different slides into foam pits and ball pools. I mean, they can absolutely just go nuts. And for children my age, it was great because they just went off and they were just completely unsupervised, but they were safe. So I actually sat on the sofa and read my book for a couple of hours, which was unheard of. So I would really
all parents love a good soft play place where there's actually a chance to just sit down and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee.
Sorry, I was going to say that's the only thing it was missing was there's a vending machine, but it could if they'd had a decent coffee machine or a cafe or a small little snack stop, we would have been there so much longer because we only left because we had to drag them away to lunch. Maybe that's the point, is that they want you to get out and go so some other people can come and enjoy. But if they'd been a good coffee machine, I would have stayed there all day.
Oh, and talking about food and drink, how did you find a VT in summer? Were most of the places open that would be open in winter, or was there less available?
I think it was quite quiet. I don't think a lot of the restaurants actually in the resort are open. What I was that there was lots of supermarkets open, which again with kids was fantastic. So there's the Spa and a Sherpa and quite a few different places which we could pick up a really nice selection of stuff and take it home for the evening. And there were some really lovely places open that we just stopped for pizza and things with the kids in resort. And then on the Saturday, when we had really lovely weather, we headed down back towards kind of Les Menuires, and we went to a really lovely restaurant called Chez Pepe Nicholas. Beautiful. It's basically a farm, and you go in and you walk up through the gardens, and there's just these huge gardens of all the vegetables planted, so all the lettuce and the broccoli and the courgettes and everything, and all the fruit plants and the herbs. And you walk through that and then into the farm, and there's a pond with trout in that's on the menu, and they've got goats and pigs and cows. Absolutely fantastic. So you can really walk around and just enjoy all of that with absolutely stunning views down the valley back towards Les Menuires, and then go into the restaurant and order off the menu all the things that you've just seen growing in the garden. So it was really eating with all your senses. I had to get a salad because I'd seen all the vegetables in the garden and they just tasted fantastic. But I have to say, it kind of made me quite annoyed because I can't even get a mint plant to grow in a garden box in La Plagne. And everyone always tells me it's because of the altitude. And then I went there and I was like, okay, so it's nothing to do with the altitude. It's just that I don't have green fingers. So
yeah, I mean, Chez Pepe Nicholas is an amazing place, and it's open in winter as well. I'd recommend that people go along. But talk about locally sourced items. I mean, it can't get more locally sourced than being within 50 meters of the venue itself, and they make their own cheese there as well.
Yeah, when we came out of lunch, we didn't realize we timed it quite well. When we came out of lunch, there's a big garden, and they'd put down a huge line of feed for some animals, and we thought, what is about to run out and get this? And basically about 50 goats just hurled down the mountain and started eating at this trough. And then the shepherds were there, and they were milking the goats while we were there, and they were talking to the kids and explaining about it. So it really, I think, I love the locally grown produce. I always really struggle to find it sometimes in the Alps, and so it really ticked so many boxes for me. But the fact that the kids could kind of be there and interact and learn a bit and understand that, oh, cheese comes from milk, oh, okay, goat's cheese comes from milk, oh, the goats, and kind of put it all together in a whole story. It was really fantastic. I'd love to go there again in the winter and just see, because obviously the gardens and things will not be there, I would imagine, because of the snow and the ice. So I'd love to see how they kind of manage it in the winter.
Sure, it's a great venue. And just to clarify as well, Val Thorens is at the end of the Belleville Valley. You drove up there, I take it. They have a lot of big car parks there. I'm guessing they're all empty. Are they still charge in summer for the car park?
I don't think so. There was a lot of parking that was just available on the roads and things, which I think is very different to the winter. So we could pull up and we could park. So we were staying in the Pierre and Vacances accommodation in Val Thorens, and we were able to pull up and park really close by to unload the car and then just move it slightly further down the hill. No problem at all.
And you mentioned that you've been trying to see more of the mountains as well. Have you been to any other resorts this summer?
Yes, so we've tried to explore around Le Plagne as much, of course. My kids go over to a bike club in Teen, so we try to get over to Teen. That's like once a week. So that's really good fun. And we had some friends come out for an alpine holiday in Morzine, and we went and joined them for a week in a really beautiful chalet in Morzine. And that was really fun because it was a full week-long holiday in the mountains. So it felt, that wasn't a busman's holiday. It really was. I had to switch off the phone, switch everything off, and then just enjoy some alpine time. And although I've lived in the mountains for nearly 20 years, I don't think I've ever taken a holiday like that in the mountains. So that was really good. Yeah.
Cool. And sorry, you're in Morzine. You were there when the Tour de France came through?
Yes, so we saw unfortunately we got in too late to see the arrival into Morzine, but we watched the takeoff the following day from Les, and really got to enjoy some of that atmosphere and see the caravans and things moving through. Really incredible. From what I could see, the coordination of the event and the way that the tour had organised everything, but also that the Port de Soleil and Morzine and Les had kind of arranged everything with shuttle buses so that you could get to the different points you needed to be at, and the information that was out. It was really smooth. It seemed to be a very slick kind of organisation.
Yeah, I mean, the Tour de France is huge for any destination when it comes through. But it can be pretty expensive for them to, if they want to actually host a finish, you got to pay the Tour de France for the, permission to get included, or for the authority to get included on the route. But I think it pays off in terms of tourism. I do some work for Les Vallees, and the Col d'Allos, which was the highest point on the Tour de France this year, in which we featured the kind of Maribel-Courchevel section in episode 182. It drives new visitors and cyclists, keen to these locations. I think it makes a huge amount of difference seeing it on the TV, and it keeps resorts' names in the forefront. So we'll see where it goes next year, but that was really interesting. Just tell me a little bit about the team bike club that your kids go to, because that must take you. I'm thinking about going down to the valley, going up to Teen. It's probably taking you, I don't know, maybe a bit under an hour to get there, perhaps?
Yeah, I would say it's about an hour. It's every week, and they have a fantastic setup there. So there must be a team of 5 or 6 instructors. And so my kids are younger. They join the morning sessions, and it runs from about May. So as soon as the lifts shut in the winter, they start running, and it's based in Teen-le-Lac. So they meet there and they go out for a couple of hours. And so my oldest kid is now nearly 7, and he's been doing it since he was maybe 4. And they just start off with really simple bike skills, so weaving through cones, going down the little grass hills and verges and things, but like really teaching them to have complete control of the bike. Now he's 6, he's nearly 7. They go up on the lifts, so he'll go up on the lift, and they'll head up and come back down the trails. He really enjoys his mountain biking, and it's something that I'll get out and do with him quite often in Le Plagne. But in the same way that I try not to teach my kids to ski, I know even less about mountain biking. So I really don't teach them to mountain bike, because 1, I don't really know what I'm talking about, and 2, they don't listen to me anyway. So I would much rather that they went and listened to an instructor who they were actually listening to and who was teaching them how to do it correctly, because I want them to have fun, but they need the control first to be able to then have the fun. And the bike club is really fantastic. I found it really good value for money. It's a really good atmosphere. The instructors are lovely. And whilst they're off in bike club, we're able to kind of explore around Teen-le-Lac and catch up with friends over there that we know from winter seasons. It's really beautiful. Like Teen-le-Lac, it's lovely in the summer. Everything is really kind of focused around the lake area there. It's really enjoyable to spend the afternoon there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Teen in summer on multiple occasions. Done a bit of skiing there, but done a lot of activities. I have so many things going on there. And you talk about Lac, where you have all the tennis courts and trampolines and a brilliant playground down there. Also, a really good aqua centre there. But there's all sorts of other things going on as well, like slacklining and archery and air rifle shooting. And there's a mini golf up in Val Thorens. It's a really, and on the lake itself, canoeing, stand-up paddle boarding, and do they still have that slide where you can go down the slide and shoot off into the water?
Yeah, I haven't done it. I've got friends that have done it. It looks like fun, but the fact that you have to put wetsuits and things on to do it because the lake is so cold puts me off. I've got to be honest.
Well, I have done it, and I've done it on skis as well, because that's where a lot of the people do it. Mine was a bit of a kind of a flop off the end of the jump into the water, but good people can use it to practice their moves when the snowpark isn't open. Cool. That is really good, Jen. That was a good insight into the mountains in the summer. I'm glad you guys had a good time. I mentioned that it is pretty warm over there. I'm going to the Alps on Monday. I thought I'd have a look at the temperatures to see what the story is, because I'm staying in a couple of refuges up 2,500 meters or so, and I want to see what sort of a sleeping bag I should be taking with me. And it turns out the minimum temperature is going to be around 12 degrees Celsius, and the freezing point is going to be over 4,000 meters and as high as 4,500 meters, which is ridiculously high even in the middle of summer. It's just a reminder that the planet is warming. And it's another reason why I wanted to have Lindsey from Protect Our Winters on board, because you do some brilliant work in helping people with awareness, and also coming together, bringing together campaigns where people can actually do something about it. And I believe, I have you on because you have a new campaign, Lindsey, coming up. I wondered if you could tell us, what it is.
Absolutely. So yeah, as you know, and hopefully like listeners who've heard before will know, Protect Our Winters exists to help people who are passionate about outdoor and mountain sports become more effective climate advocates, so that together we can campaign for effective solutions to climate change. Part of that in terms of the campaigns is knowing the right kind of moments to act. So in the UK, we are coming up to the next general election, and that's a great moment for people to have a say, have a voice, and really let the people who have that decision-making power know that it's important to them that we take effective climate action.
So you're helping to organise lobbying of politicians. Is that what we're talking about?
So we're about to launch a campaign called Send It for Climate, where we are asking everyone who likes to spend time outdoors to send a postcard in to Protect Our Winters, and we will collect them all and go and deliver them to politicians in the run-up to the next general election, with the hope that we can get some really strong promises in the manifestos, because then people are held, whoever the next government is held to those promises, and that we'll have to make them those kind of policy changes.
And, this may seem like a kind of, a dumb question, but I wonder if we could just clarify why this is important, particularly in the context of the alpine environment.
Sure. So we are in a climate emergency. Human activities and emissions are driving global warming, which obviously for an industry and for activities that depend on stable outdoor climates, and particularly cold climates, it's going to have a big impact on. We're also at a very critical point in terms of our reaction to that. So this next kind of 7 years, we have a chance to make a real difference, and the activities that we do now could mean the difference between basically 1.5 degrees of warming, which is what the scientists have all said that we really need to try and stick to, or upwards of 3, which is going to spell a lot of problems, not just for alpine industry and sports, but wider than that across the world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we're conscious of the effect across the planet, but one of the issues for ski, even if that is, thinking about our own industry and ourselves, but there is an existential threat to skiing, and that's not just the people who go on holidays. It's for all the people who live in the mountains and work in those communities around them. It's it's highly significant from that point of view. So apart from the kind of moral obligation, there is a lot that we can still do to be able to achieve that. So just remind me, so you're saying that Send It for Climate hasn't launched yet. When is it going to launch, and how can people get involved?
When does this podcast go out? Because we're recording it out, and it's
we're currently Friday the 18th, and probably go out on Monday.
Okay, so give us a couple more days. No, in the next week or so, all the details will be available on the Protect Our Winters website. We did a bit of a soft launch at the Cycling World Championships up in Glasgow last week, and kind of got out there and started talking to people who love mountain biking and love spending time in the mountains in the summer, and got their reactions. And we're taking a few learnings from that. But as of about 2 weeks' time, all the details will be up on the Protect Our Winters website, and also the postcards and some postboxes will be available in some of our partners' stores. For example, Ellis Brigham are going to put them in their bigger stores. Patagonia and Ushka and a few other brands getting behind it as well. So there will be multiple ways for people to get involved. And if you can't actually get to a store to get a postcard and post it, you can just make your own and post it to Free Post Send It. And that will come to us and let us know why it's important to you, as someone who loves the mountains and spending time outside, that the next government that's coming in puts in place climate positive policy.
Cool, I like it. And there's the point that you're trying to achieve here is the scale of it, and so it's not just individuals; it's organisations can get involved in this as well, right?
Absolutely. If you're an organisation or a professional that works in the outdoor industry, we want to kind of coordinate that voice across individuals who love spending time outside, the businesses that work outside. You just mentioned, the stable climate is important for those mountain communities and the businesses and the people that live there year round, not just those that go and visit. So it's what we really want the government to understand, or the decision makers that come in, whoever the next government is that this is a very big industry who are very concerned about this and need action to be taken, because the future of our industry really depends on it.
Yeah, well, that's great, Lindsey. What I will do is, if there's nowhere that I can put a link to initially, I'll certainly be sharing on social media afterwards, but I'll put it into the show notes retrospectively as well. And, keep up the good work, because Protect Our Winters, across the globe is extremely good at bringing people together and organising these lobbying campaigns, which is excellent. So thanks very much. Now, listener, if you have listened to episode 182, you'll have known that I was out in Australia last month, and you'll have heard my thoughts on Perisher and Thredbo. It's great for skiing for a short break if you happen to live in New South Wales or Canberra. They have been struggling for snow this season, and just, it's obviously related. I've seen it's their 9th warmest July they've ever had in Australia, and the snow has been pretty bad, although they had 10 centimetres this morning. But there are a couple of things I wasn't able to get into the last episode, and I wanted just to cover a couple of points. Firstly, skier numbers have actually been really good this year. They had record numbers of skiers in 2023 because they were closed in 2022. So that was, the comeback post-COVID. But it has caused some issues on the slopes. And if you've looked around social media, you might see that Perisher have had a right knocking on social media, especially on TikTok. People sharing videos of big queues, etc. Now, I just wanted to chip in and say, I think that was pretty unfair. Like a lot of stuff you see on social media that lasts, 10 seconds, it doesn't necessarily give you a real picture of what's going on. When I was out there, you had high winds, and sometimes, you can't do anything about the weather, as Jen discovered when you're in VT. If you do have high winds, lifts do close, and it just means there's fewer lifts open. And those videos that I saw, they were they just captured a really small moment, the beginning of the day, on a day when the lifts were closed. And it's, bad PR for a Perisher. But what was really interesting to me was how Thredbo have kind of responded to that. because these two resorts are in direct competition with each other. If someone's going from Sydney or Canberra, they can decide, right, am I going to go to Thredbo, or I'm going to go to Perisher. And Perisher sort of built up this little reputation, perhaps unfairly, for having these queues on occasion. And Thredbo, who when I was interviewing them, they referred to the guys at Perisher as those people over the road. They know they're there. They know they're direct competition. But what they've brought in is really interesting, is a cap on lift pass sales. And they've been, talking about this. So they're really trying to get that message across that, they're going to have a limited number of lift passes available. And I actually asked Richie Carroll, who's their brand and marketing manager, for a quote. I didn't get it in our interview, but he said to me, our decision to cap ski passes and manage daily capacity is to ensure a premium ski guest experience for our guests. We've been rolling this out for the last 2 years, and some peak season dates are expected to sell out. Now, I thought it was really interesting that they've done it at the same time as the other resort across the road have had some queues. And as someone who works in marketing, I just find that really interesting timing and a great way of piecing together a message, even if apparently they haven't reached the maximum on that cap of passes at all yet. Jen?
Yeah, I find it really, I think it's a really interesting idea. And yeah, I can see the bigger picture of preserving the mountains. What I find, maybe you know the answer, what I'd love to know, and the word I pick out from that is guests. And so as someone who works and lives in the mountains, I'd be interested to know, is that cap, are they looking at capping the locals and the seasonaires, or however it is that the workers work in the resorts there? Or is that just aimed at people who are coming for a week's holiday or a long weekend, for example? Do you know, are they limiting local passes as well?
That is a really good question, and I can't recall the answer to that, but I can't imagine that you would limit anyone who has a season pass. So they must have a way of managing around that.
It's interesting because there's nothing that I'm aware of in our local resorts through France, through the Tarentaise, that where they're limiting the passes as such. But what I do see is a real lean towards prioritizing tourists and visitors coming skiing, and those prices being monitored and kept reasonable-ish, I say in inverted commas. But the locals passes that used to exist were abolished last year, kind of across the board in France, and seasonaire passes and things like that no longer exist. So it's making it harder and much more expensive for people to work in the mountains and buy a lift pass for the season. It's a very expensive place to work and live. We choose to do that because it's beautiful and we absolutely love it and we love the quality of life, and that's fine. But for example, local passes in La Plagne went from, I think it was £400 or something per adult to £700 or £800, just under £800, I think, per adult. And depending on where you lived, the local mairies and communes grouped together and paid for the children's passes if they were in the school. But some communes couldn't afford to do that. And so then you were also looking at buying kids passes. So as a family of 4, all of a sudden you're paying what was maybe £500 or £600, you're looking at suddenly paying £2,000 for lift passes. So I see that starting to limit the number of people that are on the mountain, like locals that are on the mountain, for example.
Yeah, I mean, that would be an interesting analysis to know on a daily basis how many people are skiing are tourists and how many are season workers. I suspect the vast majority will be tourists, but I might follow that one up with Thredbo if I get the chance. One other point on Australia. I found it really interesting that they have these things called lodges, which work really very much like our chalets. I think the British are the only people who go for that chalet kind of concept in Europe. Maybe the Dutch do it to a certain extent, but we have catered chalets, mixed groups, etc. And in Australia, they have these lodges where you have exactly the same thing. I'm not sure that they necessarily know that culture exists over out of the UK market as well. Kind of interesting that in many respects, Australia and the UK, are very similar cultures. Slightly different for some of them, in Thredbo and in Perisher, in that they're a bit more exclusive. It's almost like for some of them you have to pay a membership. to be able to book in the first place, and then book on top of that?
I was just going to say it's kind of interesting because from what I know, it's a slightly more American model. The capping the lift passes and things like that. And I think I'd just be curious to know what kind of learnings have come out of the American resorts that could then be applied to the Australian resorts that are doing this. And then also coming on to what you were saying about that kind of slightly more European style in Australia. From the people that I spoke to in resorts last winter, the Australian market was huge, and there were a lot more Australians coming over to Europe to ski, possibly as a slight hangover from COVID because they weren't able to for a couple of years. But I wonder if it is getting more exclusive and more expensive in Australia, whether that will keep up with people willing to travel further, remote working being a thing, and they can travel for longer. So just be interesting to see where it goes.
We bring up so many interesting points there, none of which are on my running order, but
Sorry.
I'm going to drop them in. That's all right. I'm going to drop them in anyway. Firstly, the point you make about Australians travelling last winter, absolutely. Australia was behind locked borders for a long time, and a lot of people took what you might call revenge holidays, post-COVID, where they're doing the big blowout holiday. And in the same way that I went to Australia just now to see my mum, people are coming from Australia to see, relatives over in the UK, and then doing a ski holiday as part of that as well. Secondly, you mentioned the American model, and it's no coincidence, I would say, that those Australian resorts are run much more on that American style model, where all the mountain restaurants and the ski hire companies and the lift company are all the same people. They control the whole thing. And in fact, Perisher is part of the Epic Pass. And the Epic Pass also in Australia includes Hotham and Falls Creek, I think. And some people suggested that one of the reasons they're getting more people going to Perisher this year is because people are using that Epic Pass. So that's possibly something else to consider as well. I don't necessarily know the details of that. The fact I went to Australia, apologies to anyone listening to episode 182. I said I was going to tell you about why I didn't, offset my flights, and I just simply forgot about it and missed it out. As regular listeners will know, I am trying to cut my carbon emissions and not to increase them. And flights to Australia, are just massive in terms of the emissions. Now, I don't feel so bad about it because it's either I never see my mum again or I don't fly to Australia. And in fact, Helen Coffey, the travel editor of The Independent, who I interviewed, a special episode that you can look up, talked about these things as love miles. But I wanted to offset the carbon cost. And, I'm not necessarily ideologically opposed to offsetting. But as some listeners will know, some of those projects, they can be variable in their effectiveness. Some of them have been proved to protect rainforests that was never actually under threat, or to fund carbon reduction projects that would have happened anyway. And, a lot of work, needs to go into researching your offsetting if you do, choose to do that. I actually did it in a slightly different way, and I donated to an organization called Cool Earth. And I first came across this via a book by a guy called William MacAskill, who wrote a book called Doing Good Better, which I highly recommend if you're interested in doing good better. He's one of the founders of a movement called Effective Altruism. It's really interesting. I won't go into it all now, but donations to Cool Earth go direct to people living in the rainforest, and they can actually choose how to spend that money in any way that they want to. But it's based on research that shows that this is the best way to protect the rainforest. You give it to the people who live there, so they actually have an interest in it. So I'll put a few links into the show notes. But Lindsey, you're from Protect Our Winters. We're interested in reducing emissions. I wondered if you had a view, or if Protect Our Winters have a view on offsetting.
Sure, yeah, it's a hot topic over the last few years. As you say, it's come to the front that some of these schemes can have a very positive outcome. Some of them are a little bit more dubious about the benefits they bring, and that kind of lack of clarity makes it very difficult for individuals who are potentially looking to offset, a travel or a particularly carbon intensive activity that they're doing. That's kind of, an individual decision as to whether or not you want to do that. I think the main worry overall, as a kind of more systemic level with offsets, is whether or not they disincentivize reducing emissions and people start to think of them as an instead of as a and. So it's, oh, well, you know, I will do this carbon intensive activity, but I'll offset and it'll be fine. And we are not going to offset our way out of the climate emergency. It's just scientifically not possible. But what we can do is use offsets where we can't reduce those emissions. And I think that's where, if you are, or if a person is going to go and do something that's quite carbon intensive, they can then either offset or double offset if you're a bit concerned about the credibility and how useful it's going to be, but also look at those ways that you can reduce your own emissions, your organisation's emissions, and those systemic emissions. Because again, the narrative around offsetting very much puts the impetus on the individual, and individual action is important, but we need the kind of large scale societal systems changes that are going to make a really big difference.
Cool. Well, I think you summed that up, very well. Like I said, I'm not ideologically opposed to it, but the much better solution is to actually reduce emissions or choose lower carbon options as well. And if you listen to the back catalogue of the Ski podcast, you'll hear about loads of ways of doing that, including, you know, Lindsey's journey by train and electric vehicles, etc. Right, we're moving towards the close now. I enjoy all feedback about the show. I do like to know what you think, especially ideas for features. So please contact me on social at the Ski Podcast or by email thisskipodcast@gmail.com. Got a couple of comments since the last episode. Doug emailed to say, I listened to episode 182. That was about Australia on a run and loved it. Simon Burgess contacted me via Twitter saying, I really enjoyed the Thredbo Perisher episode, brought back some nice memories. So pleased to hear that, Simon. And Bo Banding contacted me by email. He said, truly enjoying the podcast, but I'm wondering why you're never talking about Scandinavian ski resorts. There are a lot of good areas in those countries, except for Denmark, where Bo is from. Now, that is a really good point, Bo. We did feature Svalbard in episode 94, Norway in episode 58, and I quick look, we had a special interview with the cross-country skiers, Andrew Musgrave and Andrew Young, who live and train in Norway. But I think you're right. I think we should have more. And I'm pretty sure that Rob Rees, who's contributed to the podcast a few times, recently went out to Sweden. So perhaps we can get him on board to discuss that. But Bo, I'm going to take it on board. We'll cover that. So if you like the podcast, there are a couple of things you can do to help. Firstly, you could review us on Apple Podcasts. We've got 102 ratings so far. And secondly, you can always buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/the ski podcast. There are now 183 episodes to catch up with. 73% of them were listened to in the last week. I had a quick look in our analytics and I see our listens are up 29% in the last year, which is great. So thank you to all of our listeners. And I see that they are from as far afield as South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Iran and Egypt. Coming up in the next episode, I'm going to be reporting on hiking in Les Vallees, and also going to be taking part in the Zermatt Ultrax trail race. I'll be reporting on that, and hopefully testing the Alpine Crossing, the new lift that goes between Klein Matterhorn in Zermatt and Testa Grigia in Cervinia. But in the meantime, you can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at the Ski Podcast. And I would like to thank Les Vallees for sponsoring the show, and thank my guest today, Jen. Thank you.
Thanks, it's been a pleasure as always. Lovely to speak to you both.
And Lindsey.
Oh, thanks for having me, and thanks for supporting Protect Our Winters and letting everybody know about what they can do to protect the sport we love.
No problem. I will always endeavour to do that. And finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.